You're listening to Beyond Technique, the podcast that empowers photographers to bring their businesses to the next level. Hello and welcome to Beyond Technique, brought to you by Platypod, Photofocus, and Skip Cohen University. This is Shamira Young, and I'm joined by my co-host, Skip Cohen. Skip, what's up?
Hey, Shamira. Oh, there's a lot up today. This is going to be a lot of fun. So yes. I'm going to do my usual and intro our guest today. This is a very special episode of Beyond Technique because we're going to wander into a totally different topic from imaging directly. We're going to talk about giving back to your community. We've got Ali Furtwangler joining us. She's the volunteer manager for one of my most favorite nonprofits, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. But her involvement goes so much deeper, and Ali is one of those few people we all know who walk the talk. Being involved in the organization sparked her interest in photography, which then led her to build out her skill set. And she's got a business today as a senior portrait artist, and then she also became a Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep photographer herself. So we're going to talk about Ali's journey as a photographer, giving back, the importance of becoming a Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep photographer, and especially the myths that so many people I talk to have about working with grieving families. And then obviously how you can get more involved. As the volunteer program manager, she's been there, she's done it, she's worked with so many photographers, and if you're headed towards WPPI or Imaging USA coming up in the next few months, make it a point to wander over to their booth. There's a great quote that I think is still on the Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep website from Muhammad Ali, which is, quote, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth," close quote. You got to give back. So on that note, Ali, welcome to Beyond Technique. It's time for your lips to move.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I'm excited to be here today and share about my story and this amazing organization.
Well, Ali, we're excited to have you here.
Oh, we did that together.
Oh, so Ali, let's kick it off with you tell us a personalized version of your background. I know that Skip touched on a number of details, but kind of fill in the holes and the gaps and, highlight anything that stands out to you. But tell us about your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so back in 2011, we lost our firstborn son, Zachary, to an unknown cause at about 21 weeks gestation. And we were extremely fortunate that my sister-in-law actually let us know about this organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep and said, I really think you should get photos of him taken. And we were taking our own just because, and thought, well, that's kind of weird. Who would want to come take pictures of my dead baby? But we did. We contacted them, and we were so grateful that we had somewhere to turn, because you don't just look for a professional photographer to come do that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So having a place to turn was amazing. And we had this volunteer come in and take these beautiful portraits, which we've got giant 16 by 20 canvases hanging all throughout our house. And throughout those years, bringing 3 lively little ones into the world, they know their big brother because of those portraits, and they can see him, and he is very real to them. And, he's a part of our everyday conversation. And without those portraits, it wouldn't be that way. So knowing that deep impact those simple photos had on our family, when I started volunteering as a parent volunteer, I wanted to do more. And so over the years, I got more and more involved in leadership, and then eventually was on staff, but it just still wasn't quite enough. And I was with this wonderful group of volunteers who were so giving of their time and talents and sharing and mentoring that I decided, all right, let's just see what happens. If I pick up a camera and take on some of this knowledge, will I be able to get a knack for it and continue helping in additional ways? So one of our local volunteers lent me her backup camera. And it was all of those crazy, why are my pictures coming out yellow? Why are they too dark? All of these learning curves that come with beginning photography, making me feel extremely inadequate. But I persisted, and with the help of so many wonderful volunteers and leadership at Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, I picked it up pretty quickly, and I binge watched everything I could online. And within a few months, I decided that I was going to dive in and get my own camera and lights and really do it and not have an option to fail. When I set my mind to something, I go all in. And so after probably about 6 months, I was to the point where my mentors were saying, yeah, you're ready. And at that time, which I still am, I oversee the membership application committee who reviews evaluations. So I didn't want any bias. And so I submitted anonymously and got accepted as an affiliated photographer for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. And from there, I continued and worked on my editing skills and became a digital retouch artist as well, which we're very much in need of both of those roles, especially retouch artists, because we get family submitted images for when photographers aren't available, or medical affiliates who are nurses and doctors taking these photos when a photographer is unavailable, and then they submit for retouching. So it's just been a true honor to be able to turn that grief and that pain into something rewarding that I do every day in honor of my son. And to help me offset the cost of all of this photography equipment, I have a business where I do family portraiture, and it's been a very fun and rewarding thing to do.
Wow.
Like I said, you walk the talk.
I try.
Well, there's a great line from Jake Levinson, who's the father of guerrilla marketing, and he passed away a few years ago, but he's really known for the expression guerrilla marketing. And it's that people like buying products and supporting companies that they perceive as giving back to the community. And while Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep is very specialized in terms of how you're giving back, it doesn't change the fact that it's under that whole umbrella of giving photographers the ability to use that very unique skill set to give back to their community and to be there. And I'd love to get into one topic right away, which are the number of photographers that I talk to and suggest they go take a look at Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, that they email or call Ali or talk to somebody in the organization. And the myth that they always have is it's always the same comment. Oh my God, I couldn't do that. I'd be crying more than the parents. Talk about that a little, because there's so many photographers that have said to me after the fact that it changed their lives. Yeah.
Well, my response to that is, first of all, I'm screaming in my head, you can do it, you can do it. But outwardly, I say, how do you know you can't do it until you try? If you even try and help one family and then decide you can't do it, you've still made a greater impact on that one family, because you never know how many families that's going to touch indirectly. So I really feel that you don't know what you can do until you get in there. And also, when you do walk into that room, you're not looking at it as though you're taking photos of this grieving family. You're in there and you are in photographer mode. You get into your zone and everybody's comfortable in their zone. You may have that initial like new client jitters kind of feel, but you go in there and you take those shots. You've got your shot list in your mind. You know exactly your workflow once you get used to it. And even someone who's super experienced and knows about grief and has been in it firsthand, my first session, I was terrified. My thoughts of, am I good enough? Am I going to do this right? Am I just going to be able to handle myself emotionally? Is it going to trigger me? And I got in there and it was fine. It was great. I was able to connect with the families and give them something so beautiful that they're going to love, just like I love my photos and have them hanging for generations.
Would you agree that it was life-changing in terms of your personal growth?
Oh, absolutely. I was an IT auditor before I got into photography and my role at Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I was very happy in my career, and then decided to go on maternity leave after my third lively little one. and didn't go back. And then about 6 months later is when the staff position was brought to the table. And I went back and forth on that, but decided I was going to go in and see how that went. And my life would be totally different had I not pursued Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep in photography. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I feel like I found my purpose. In fact, there's a post that we have that I wrote on our Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep website about my journey to find joy. And it's kind of the parent perspective going from, just regular life to finding what I'm here to do and maybe why. As a grieving mother, you never want to hear, like, in the moment, well, it happened for a reason. No, you never want to say that. But now, almost 10 years later, I feel like I've found my purpose and my reason. And only, the griever alone can find that purpose themselves.
That's
so
amazing.
I'm grateful for that.
Wow.
Great answer.
Ali, wow. And, I think one thing that many listeners are wondering, and I know I'm wondering, Ali, could you give us kind of a quick rundown of what to expect at a typical photo shoot from the photographer's perspective?
Absolutely. So a lot of areas have a few differing aspects on how the call is dispatched. Some bigger areas have a team of dispatchers who take the calls and then work out through text or phone call on which photographers are available. Once they decide a photographer is available, then the photographer gets the basic information to determine if the baby and the family want the photos, because sometimes nurses call in advance before offering the family, just to make sure someone's available so they're not making empty promises. Once a photographer goes and gets to the hospital, I always check in with the nurse beforehand. I never walk into the room blind. I talk to that nurse and find out what's the emotion of the room, what's the condition of the baby, just kind of those basic questions, which we've got an amazing training to help prepare our volunteers so they don't feel like they're just, walking in blind ever, and really gets you prepared for what you're going to experience. But then once I walk into that room after I get briefed by the nurse, I always introduce myself to the family and let them know how honored I am to be there with them, because especially right now during the COVID times, visitors aren't allowed or haven't been over the last year and a half. And most hospitals have been making compassionate exceptions for bereaved families. So I've been there when siblings and grandparents have been turned away. And so it's truly an honor to be able to be in that room with that family. But anyway, so once you're in that room, it kind of depends on the family situation. Sometimes you're walking into a situation where the family knew that they were going to lose their baby and they've come to terms with it. They're sad, but they're not overly sad and just kind of trying to celebrate the day and the moments that they do have. Some families, it was a complete unexpected experience and they lost the baby during childbirth, and they are usually extremely distraught and hard to keep it together. So you just kind of have to go with what the feeling of the room is and who's holding babies. Sometimes parents don't want to touch their babies. Sometimes they don't want to see the babies and you're just photographing baby alone. And other times you've got a mom or a dad who won't let their baby go. And then positioning is a little bit tricky because they really just won't let their baby go. But you learn to adapt and you just kind of feel out everything and your instincts kind of take over and you know what to do. I mean, you've gone through all the training at this point, so you've got some suggestions in your mind on how you're going to play things. So it makes it a little bit easier. And then my goal is always to go through my shot list, and ideally 30 to 40 minutes is like the sweet spot of how long the session would be. But then again, if you have a family who has been prepared for example, I had a trisomy baby one time, and they knew right away that they were going to be carrying this baby to term and that she would not make it. But they planned out a complete newborn session. And they had tons of props, tons of outfits. I mean, it was a true newborn session, like it was a living baby. And so I was there for about 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
And was not expected, but it was a wonderful time, and they truly cherished all those images that I was able to make for them. Once the session is done, I let the families know that I was, again, honored to be there to meet and hold their baby. And I let them know how precious their baby was. And during the whole session, I'm kind of cooing over that baby as though it was a live baby, letting it know that it's doing great. And, oh, look at your cute little button nose, and you've got mom's nose, or, oh my gosh, you've got dad's big feet, I bet. All those little things that help parents feel like parents, to make them feel, because it's about not just the pictures, but the emotions of the moment, and helping them be able to remember those moments in a positive light is what I'm trying to help them do. And there's also, of course, the administration of the consent form. And I do that before I start anything while I'm introducing myself. But, and then you walk out of the room after saying your goodbyes and let them know about the expectations of the image delivery, and that they're black and white and all those kinds of things. And you kind of part your ways.
I ran a blog post probably, oh my God, it's 8 or 9 years ago. It was one of the very first ones that I had ever shared on the SCU blog. And what was interesting, it was a guest post from one of your photographers. But then a week later, in the comments section on the blog, the mother of the baby who had died responded. And all she could talk about was how her photographer gave her baby an identity. It wasn't, it didn't change that it was tragic, but it gave the baby an identity. And it's kind of what you were talking about when you were talking about your background, because she talked about how the children that came after the baby they lost know and respect and understand that there was another member of the family that isn't there with them now, but is there in spirit. And it was it was one of those moments where, you're sitting there reading somebody's comments, and I got a couple of tears rolling down my face, because it was so touching. And that's one of those things that, to me, so many photographers forget. And it doesn't matter whether you're working for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep on that kind of a project, or for that matter, if you've just captured an incredibly emotional wedding. The reality is that too many artists forget that they're the magicians that take the intangible and turn it into something tangible. And in this case, it really is intangible, because this child is no longer an active part of the family, and yet you're giving that child a certain level of legitimacy. Is they're there.
Absolutely.
They're part of the family.
It's powerful. It truly is. I mean, we all say that the photographs are always so important, and we tell our clients that you don't know how much you're going to appreciate a photograph until the people in the photographs are gone. Well, this is an immediate impact right there. You don't have to wait for the family in the photographs to be gone. This is the one and only opportunity for those photographs. And so they are the most important photographs that family is going to have. And so it's just such an honor to be able to be there to capture those moments for the families, to be trusted to capture those moments, and just provide and give that beautiful gift to those families in our communities.
Great point.
So it sounds like there are benefits to joining Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep as a photographer, instead of being kind of a rogue photographer trying to do all this and manage all of this on their own. Can you talk about the benefits of joining the organization as a photographer?
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly wouldn't want to do it all alone, because, for one, grieving families are a little bit, can be a little bit erratic, especially when you don't know how a baby has been lost and they're trying to place blame and find answers and that kind of thing. So one of the major things in my mind is that Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep covers liability insurance for all of their active volunteers. As a photographer, we've all had instances where someone has had something happen on a session, right? You don't want to be the one responsible for that. You need to be covered. Where these kinds of emotions are in play, I'm very risk averse. So that's very important. Besides that, we have a lot of the industry behind us. We've got a lot of industry support. Shootproof is amazing to us, and they provide our gallery delivery 100% free to the organization. And so the families get these beautiful image galleries through Shootproof, and they can do all their free downloads. And then we've got Bay Photo provides really inexpensive professional level prints for our families if they decide to purchase any prints through there. Of course, they've got the rights to print them wherever the heck they want. MPix provides this beautiful album to our families. And these, I guess, are more family benefits. But in addition, we have discounts for our volunteers for those services. So we've got great discounts from industry sponsors for our volunteers. And you get a list of all those in the training. And then I guess training is another key benefit, because when you think about it and you're scared of the idea of walking into a room with a grieving family and you don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or mess up, the training is important. We're not teaching you how to become a photographer. We've got an application for that. We vet you before we even want to train you. So we don't look for, you don't have to be in a professional studio or professional, in that traditional sense. You just need to be a professional level. So we take highly skilled amateurs and anybody who can take the shots and show that skill level, because this is a one-time opportunity, and we need to make sure we're sending volunteers who aren't gonna, botch it, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And so we've got all of these great resources and training and discounts. And then the community. I mean, when you need to debrief after a session, it's hard to go home and not have anyone to talk to about it. But we've got this great community of our volunteers where we've got people who just come home and chat on it's a Facebook group right now. We've also got a discussion board within our training to image share, since we don't put any images on any social media platforms, even though it's private, just for sanity's sake and making sure nothing gets leaked, because we want to be the utmost respectful to families. But when they get home from a session and need to debrief and just say, hey, I just had this really hard session with a 27-week baby, parents were a wreck, it really hit home, anyone around to talk, or just chat it out through there. I mean, it's just amazing, the community we've got. And we also have a workplace chaplain, which is not a religious chaplain, but someone who will actually physically talk to you on the phone if you want a third party and don't want to get super personal with another volunteer or something. But there's just so many great benefits. And then again, for the families, if like I said earlier during my story, if someone said, oh, I had a photographer come take photos of my baby when they passed, it's like, okay, great, but how do you start looking for that photographer? I'm not going to go search the internet and start cold calling photographers I don't know. Right. And in that moment of grief, you just don't have that level of thought to process that in your brain. But when there's a photographer list right there on Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, that's easy. These are people that have been vetted. And then you have a better reach. When you're going alone, like I said, Joe Schmo goes out and takes a photograph, and that helps in, who knows where, Illinois. But then that friend of a friend tells me about it, and I'm like, okay, so now what? What do I do? There's no Joe Schmo over here to look for. So knowing that Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep has that widespread reach is helpful for the families.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that I want to get involved as a photographer right now. What's the process? I know about Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I call or email you, or I go into the website and I hit the button that I'm interested. What's the process hit it from two directions. One is, what's the process of being a volunteer or an affiliate photographer? But the other, I know you guys need help in so many other areas. What's the process of becoming a volunteer?
Absolutely. So to become an affiliated photographer, you can go to our website. There is up in the very top right, the apply button, or link rather, and you go through that application. As a photographer, we're looking for those who have the skill with attention to detail, focus, lighting, and oh gosh, I think there's another one, but it's skipping my head. But we're looking for those really basics. Lighting is the one that most people kind of get tripped up on. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a natural light photographer. Sorry, I can't do it." Well, to that, I'd like to say I was not a photographer, period. And I did it. It's not that hard to learn, and you can get really inexpensive lights if you really have the passion and dedication and want to help your community. That shouldn't be what's stopping you.
Ali, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to make one comment on natural light photographers. For those of you out there that consider yourself a natural light photographer, when you tell somebody that, certainly within the photo industry, the bells go off for all of us, because we all know that means that you're a little bit afraid of studio lighting, or you haven't taken the time to learn it. And the reality is that we're all natural light lovers. But if you talk to people like Sue Bryce, for example, who talks about how she always considers herself a natural light photographer, and today she's one of the finest portrait artists in the world, it's because she got to know lighting and controlling her environment. So for those of you out there that consider yourself natural light experts, just take the time, learn lighting. It's not that complicated, but it is really easy to procrastinate and not get into it. And there, I got on my soapbox for a minute.
And I can totally attest to that. If you are saying you don't want to learn lighting, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But I started from nothing. I wasn't even a photographer, and I learned how to do lighting. So if I can start from nothing and get to where I needed to be to apply and be an affiliated photographer, I know you photographers out there are already way ahead of where I started. And it only took me a few short months to get from zero to affiliated photographer. So I give you the challenge to pick up a speed light, an ice light, whatever it may be that you have lying around. There's lots of wonderful things out there that are affordable, and try it out. So from there, I think we have these 5 images. They're all indoor pose portraits, and 3 of them must use some sort of auxiliary lighting. That's, strobes, speed lights, light wands, whatever you may have it. Ideally, not just a bounce or just not a pop-up flash. You can bounce a flash, but we really just try to stay away from that flat lighting, because when you convert your images to black and white, you get rid of all the color distractions. But that lighting, if that lighting is flat, it's going to be a boring photo. The directional lighting just really amplifies that image and evokes so much more emotion. These images that we're providing should have no reason not to provoke emotion. These are images capturing so much love and also a little bit of sadness. They're powerful images, and that's what our photographers need to be able to produce. That isn't to say that we only take professional photographers. Anybody can do this with the passion and dedication. So you're submitting these 5 images, and the turnaround time is about up to 2 weeks. You'll get an email back, and nobody is declined. We had a lot of issues in the past where we kind of got a bad rep for declining photographers because we didn't have a photographer overseeing the application committee. And so it was a yes or a no. There was no gray area. And so now I take the time and I reach out to every single person personally to ask for additional images, because a lot of the times what happens is people don't take the application super seriously and think, oh, this is just a volunteer job, so here's what it is. This is what I've got time to find. But what we need is we really need to see your best indoor pose portraits, because this is a one-time opportunity And we needed to know that you are going to go in there and give it your all, and that your all is going to be good for that family. So take the time. Don't just look at those last 5 images. We need to work with you, and we will work with you to get you to the right images. When I applied, I didn't have a portfolio. I was a brand new, starting everything photographer. So I had my husband take a baby doll, because we have 3 kids and there's tons of dolls. And I had him pose with this baby doll in low lighting so that I could get really nice directional lighting on my shots. And I submitted 5, images that I made specifically for my application. For applying as a digital retouch artist, the application is pretty simple. You submit the online application, and then probably within a day, you will get an email with the sample images to edit. We have 4 sample images, and we ask that you return those within 2 weeks so that we can evaluate those and provide any feedback. And that's pretty much the process on that. It just is showing how your editing capabilities play out, and we give a very clear matrix and sample edits to show you what we're looking for, because editing trauma out of a baby, of a newborn, is most certainly not something that everybody has the initial skill set for. And so we understand that too. We want to help everybody grow. And that's another wonderful benefit of Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, actually, as I speak about it, is your skills with photography, lighting, editing, it will exponentially increase because of these sessions, because these are going to be some of the most difficult sessions you've had. And on that note, if you're a photographer hearing that and thinking, oh boy, I'm not a good editor, I don't want to get myself into that, that's why we have some digital retouch artists. Because getting in there and taking a photo and having a session for 40 minutes or so, that's not the time-consuming part. We all know the post-processing, especially with a baby that's going to have some trauma, is going to be the brunt of the work. So I always know when I take a session that if I don't have time, I'm going to be on vacation or I'm just slammed with life. I know that I have the option to go take these photos because I want the family to have these beautiful images, and then ask for the help of one of our digital retouch artists. It's as simple as clicking a button for a checkbox to request help in our system. So it's super easy and awesome. And then for anybody else who is in a non-photography role, we are always looking for dispatchers who help take the calls and do the logistics of getting a photographer out to the sessions, community volunteers helping with recruiting, hospital outreach, team get-togethers, whatever it may be. There are lots of different things that people can do outside of photography and retouching. And there is if you search for there's also the assistant to photographer role, actually, as I was about to say and cut myself off, for those who are maybe just starting photography and need that little bit of mentoring, or just want to be there to hold the lights and just be a help in the room. So we've got the assistant to photographer and community volunteer roles. Those applications, if you search our website for assistant to photographer or community volunteer, you'll be able to find that application. Right now, we do have a weird little workaround where it's just applying through the digital retouch artist role and then noting in the comments that you're looking for the assistant or community volunteer role. So that's how you apply.
I know September is Recruiter Volunteer Month.
Yeah.
What's going to be going on? Where do people go? We've already talked about specific things of how they can get more involved and do things. But what happens in September for Recruiter Month?
Yeah, so we really hit social media hard with Recruiter Volunteer Month, trying to get more volunteers and focus solely on recruiting. And we offer free volunteer applications, which normally that's a $10 fee. And I often get asked, why do we charge for our applications? And the short answer is because a lot of people want to get free reviews of their images. And so we want to make sure that these people are serious about what we're actually doing and not just trying to get free image evaluations. And it takes a lot to run this organization. We have a lot of back end and technology, so it takes a lot to get all of that software going to take an application. But we always, even without Recruit a Volunteer Month, we always are willing to provide scholarships and waivers because we never want finances to be a barrier for a dedicated volunteer. So Recruit a Volunteer Month just is really going to be more of seeing us out there in the internet and trying to get a wider audience, I think. Asking industry partners to share about Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep and, get a bigger reach to photographers and digital retouch artists specifically.
That's fantastic.
During September, I can promise everybody, as usual, there will be articles that will be running on the Skip Cohen University blog. I'm very proud to be an ambassador for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, along with a bunch of other photographers. And it's just a great organization. But the bottom line for everybody, as Shamira brings us to a close in just a second, is that you've got to look at giving back to your community. And this is a great way to do it. And I'm not saying this is the only way. That's not what we're saying here today. But I just thought this was a good time for everybody to get to know Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep.
Yes. And I appreciate you guys helping share with the world what we do. And anybody listening today, I would love to offer you, ahead of Recruit a Volunteer Month, free application. You can go to nowilaymedown-to-sleep.org/apply-skip and then use the promo code SKIP, and that will get you a free application.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure and include that in the show notes as well. Wow, this has been just amazing. And Skip, I do want to make sure and remember to ask, where can folks find you online?
Well, just before we do that, Ali, where else do they go to find you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, you can reach me at Ali at NILMDTS.org, so the abbreviation for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, or my studio information, which is just a home studio, but lifeunderthestars.com. So that's me. And fun fact, I named my photography business after my son, Zachary, because we've got a star up in the Little Dipper that is named after him. So everything I do is living life under the stars.
Oh, I love it.
That works. And in terms of Shamira's question, everything I write, it's always the same answer on these podcasts. Everything I write is at skipcohenuniversity.com. My Facebook and Twitter names are both the same. It's nothing fancy here. It's just Skip Cohen. And we always want to hear from you for feedback. So if you've got an interest in suggesting other guests that we should have on or topics we should hit on this podcast, write to me at skip@mei500.com or skip@platypod.com, since it's thanks to Platypod we do this podcast. And Shamira, I always ask the same question again. Where do they go to find you?
Yes, folks can send me an email at shamira@photofocus.com. That is my first name, CHAMIRA @photofocus.com. We love getting questions, ideas, and feedback because it shapes how we move forward with the show and the amazing guests that we have on the show. And Ali, you are amazing. This has been
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for chatting with us.
You shared so much good information for people.
I'm glad. I'm always happy to share. And if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer anybody's questions about anything we didn't cover today.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we want to thank our listeners for joining us as well. Please spread the word about this podcast, especially if you want to improve your photography business in 2021 and beyond. We look forward to having you with us next time on Beyond Technique, brought to you by Platypod, Photofocus, and Skip Cohen University.